మీడియా రంగంలో నైతిక విలువలు పెంపొందించాల్సిన అవసరం ఉందని ప్రొఫెసర్ శకుంతల రావు అన్నారు. న్యూయార్క్లోని ప్లాట్స్బర్గ్ స్టేట్ యూనివర్సిటీ జర్నలిజం డిపార్ట్మెంట్లో కమ్యూనికేషన్ స్కిల్స్ ప్రొఫెసర్గా పనిచేస్తున్న శకుంతల రావు సాక్షి కార్యాలయానికి వచ్చారు. ఆమెతో పాటు ఆ రంగంలోనే దాదాపు దశాబ్దకాలంగా పనిచేస్తున్న అసోసియేట్ ప్రొఫెసర్ కంచన్ మాలిక్ కూడా సాక్షి కార్యాలయాన్ని సందర్శించారు. ఆర్థిక ఒత్తిళ్లు, రాజకీయ ఇబ్బందులు తట్టుకుంటూ స్వేచ్ఛగా వార్తలిచ్చే విధానం రావాలని అభిప్రాయపడ్డారు. జర్నలిజంలో నైతికత పెరగాల్సిన అవసరం ఉందన్నారు. ప్రస్తుతం భారత్లో మీడియా స్వేచ్ఛ ఉన్నా కొన్ని ఒత్తిళ్లు కూడా ఉన్నాయని ఆమె స్పష్టం చేశారు. జర్నలిజంలో నైతికతపై భారత్లో వారిద్దరూ కలిసి ఒక ప్రాజెక్టు చేస్తున్నారు. అమెరికన్ కాన్సులేట్ ఆధ్వర్యంలో కొనసాగుతున్న ఆ ప్రాజెక్టు విశేషాలు, అమెరికా భారత్ మధ్య జర్నలిజానికి సంబంధించిన తేడాలు తదితర అంశాలను సాక్షి టీవీతో పంచుకున్నారు. ప్రొఫెసర్ శకుంతల రావు, కంచన్ మాలిక్లతో సీనియర్ జర్నలిస్ట్ అమర్ ఇంటర్వ్యూ ఇప్పుడు చూద్దాం.
అమెరికన్ కాన్సులేట్ హైదరాబాద్లో ఒక ప్రాజెక్టును తీసుకున్నది, దాన్ని శకుంతల రావు గారికి అప్పగించింది. శకుంతల రావు గారు అమెరికాలో జర్నలిస్ట్గా ఉన్నారు. ఆమె జర్నలిజంలో చాలా కాలంగా పనిచేస్తున్నారు. ఆమె పరిశోధన, ఆమె బోధన అంతా కూడా జర్నలిజంలో నైతికతకు సంబంధించిన విషయాల మీద సాగింది. అదే అంశం మీద, జర్నలిజంలో నైతికత అనే అంశం మీదనే హైదరాబాద్లో వారు ఇక్కడ ఒక ప్రాజెక్ట్ చేస్తున్నారు, అమెరికన్ కాన్సులేట్ ప్రాజెక్టు. వారితో పాటు కంచన్ మలిక్ ఉన్నారు. వీరు అసోసియేట్ ప్రొఫెసర్ డిపార్ట్మెంట్ ఆఫ్ కమ్యూనికేషన్, హైదరాబాద్ యూనివర్సిటీ, హైదరాబాద్ సెంట్రల్ యూనివర్సిటీలోని కమ్యూనికేషన్స్ డిపార్ట్మెంట్లో వీరు ప్రొఫెసర్గా ఉన్నారు. ఇద్దరు ప్రొఫెసర్లు కలిసి హైదరాబాద్లో ఒక ప్రాజెక్ట్ చేస్తున్నారు జర్నలిజంలో నైతికత మీద. వారిద్దరితో మాట్లాడదాం. గుడ్ ఈవినింగ్ శకుంతల రావు అండ్ Kanchan. I am just introducing you about what you are doing here, what project you have taken up, the ethics in journalism. So can you tell me something about how is the ethics of journalism you saw in US and you are seeing in India?
Okay, I have studied actually journalism ethics both in India and United States, and I think there are lots of similarities because they're both democracies and they're both relatively functional democracies. So in that sense, I think there are lots of commonalities. However, in the United States, journalism has a long history, almost 100 years of, especially in television news. I think we have had television news since World War II. So it's a much more mature medium, and I think that's why one of the consequence is that we have strong ethical codes, their practices, their practices, fair practices and good practices. And also people have had a lot of journalism training before they actually come to practice journalism on a day-to-day basis. What I've seen in India is that's where I think there is though the journalists overall do an excellent job, and I think the media is incredibly vibrant compared to a lot of places that I've visited, there is still a lot of work to be done, and I think that's true for university education to provide people more training in ethics particularly, and also, you know, the best practices of journalism.
Absolutely.
How do you see that?
Something that we've been discussing over the 5 days that we've been working and interacting with the journalists, we realize that yes, probably journalism education and training has included media ethics for a slightly longer period in the US than in India. It's probably matured, and the discussion on ethics is, you know, is more mature than we have it in India, right? In India, in journalism training, media ethics is now becoming important, right? It's kind of taken as granted that if you have good values, there will be media ethics. So there was probably a need to do it formally was not seen earlier. But I believe the way the media, schools are coming up all across India, the training is becoming more and more professionalized, and there is a need to, urgent need to be discussing some of those issues to make journalism more responsible, more sensitive, and probably even professionally, at par with international levels of journalism. So I think there is a felt need to have a media ethics training which for which there is a buy-in from the industry. So I remember media ethics is not absolutely excluded, but it forms part of the course, and people would probably mug up and clear the exam. But now the need is to actually develop that skill, the skill of ethical decision making, which can be used.
That will be more important for the practitioners of journalism.
Absolutely. Correct. So training students in a way that they can actually make use of it when they get into the media industry is the need of the hour, rather than just having it as a course and looking at it as moral science, you know, like that.
Shakuntala rao, do you feel that either it is in America or in India, the media is so independent that it can follow the ethics?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think it really is a context-based question in the sense that I think there are stories where I think both countries cover them fairly, equitably, and really in a very open and free way. But I think there are stories in which there are a lot of barriers, right? And so in that sense, it can be difficult in both places. I don't think we can sort of make a blanket argument in either of these countries and say, well, United States, we can report all stories we want to, and look at you guys in India, you cannot report. I don't think that's true. There have been many instances, for instance, in my journalism course in ethics, that we talk about the difficulties. But, we do have United States First Amendment, which is a constitutional right, and that actually does give us incredible leeway compared to a lot of other constitutions in the world. So it does give us kind of almost like a legal right to information, right, which goes beyond just freedom of speech. Right? So in that sense, we do have that added bonus, if you want to call it that way, right, compared to India. So in that sense, yes, ultimately, I think from my perspective, having teaching journalism ethics for 25 years and looking at all the case law history, the United States, I think, has a lot more freedom in say, for instance, political stories, right? There's not that much pressure from the government. The government is always trying to intervene, right? And they're always trying to, in essence, either manipulate or influence, right? But there is very rare instances of outright censorship.
Okay. Kanchan, you have been teaching journalism for a long time, quite some time. So don't you think in India, journalists are free to write on politicians or politics?
A good question again. Yeah. If we look at the Constitution, Indian Constitution also gives journalists freedom of expression. We know that. There are reasonable restrictions. We have to, and report.
Now we have Right to Information Act.
Yes, we report within the, law of the land, which is reasonable. But I would not deny that, and I don't see that, what I'm going to say now doesn't probably apply to the US. There are pressures. Right, there are pressures, political and others also, right? So of course the reporting is free on part of the journalists, but we cannot deny that there's always that little bit of pressure. The question is whether or not you give in to it. Do you have resources to stand up to it, and how fair and balanced you can be given some of those pressures which always exist in probably across the world, in any country.
World over, the situation is the same.
Can I add one other point?
Please. Please.
I think there's one pressure that is true for both countries, which is the economic pressures, which is the pressure from advertisers and really having revenue generation.
Yeah, that is what I was going to ask you.
The business
has taken front seat.
Absolutely. In the United States, what we are seeing, therefore, is the rise of social media and the rise of internet, because the business pressures in the conventional media had become so overwhelming that people are now turning to internet media, which is considered to be much quote-unquote free.
But now that you have mentioned about social media has no restrictions, social media has no, controls over it. So how do you expect social media to follow ethics?
Kanchan, you want to handle that?
No. There are issues. While we see social media as a platform which provides you freedom of expression, probably a little better than you have in conventional media. But of course, there are issues. There are issues of verification. There are issues of credibility. There are issues of just going around and writing whatever you want to write. There are problems. It doesn't come without its problems, but we cannot deny also that social media does give you a platform which is more democratic, which is more accessible, where people can come out and say what they want to. But again, the consequences,
of course,
you have to be careful about that.
That is why I was asking about
And if you go back and look at the history of media, right, you will find that every time there's a new media, there is a lot of chagrin among people.
Of course.
Everybody says, okay, this is it. This media is going to take us to hell and beyond. The same happened with television, right? Everybody said television
Exactly.
medium, and especially television news.
How do you see the explosion in television media in India?
I think it's fantastic. Okay, I grew up in the Doordarshan era. So for me, I think television news and having this kind of open-ended conversation that you and I are having is absolutely breathtaking. And I think this only strengthens democracy. I mean, I study democracy around the world, and I think there's nothing more vibrant than what I see in India today in terms of television news. However, I do feel that there has been an oversaturation of the market, and that can be good and that can be bad, and those are some of the ethical challenges.
There are both good and bad in that.
In all
Kanchan, what do you say when compared to print media and electronic media? Do you feel what do you think, which media is more responsible?
Now that's a difficult question. You're putting one against the other, right? No. I think there is a need for being responsible in both media. Both are powerful media. Of course, visuals, they say, are more powerful than print, and people get attracted to television much more. But again, I think responsibility.
But print is called Patthar Pe Lakir.
Yeah, I know. Yes, but that's why exactly my point, that I think both media are powerful and both media have an equal need to behave in a responsible way. Both media enjoy an equal amount of freedom also, and so the need to follow ethics and be responsible is probably same in both the cases.
Finally, again coming to your project now, I'm told you are preparing a curriculum for ethical journalism. What about it?
Yeah.
Well,
What is all about it?
Well, it's a joint project, right? And I'm sort of a consultant for the project. I've been teaching media ethics for about 25 years now. And Kanchan and I were asked to we collaborated on this project. And she has been teaching journalism ethics for about 10 years now. And the purpose of it is to basically come up with a curriculum for local academics, students, with the help and support of the local media. And one of especially the people, the senior people, the idea is not only to kind of start the conversation of journalism ethics, to catch them young, so to speak, when they're starting their first or second year of journalism education, but also to have the media be involved in it.
Do the universities in US or India have separate courses or separate subjects for journalism ethics?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. We have a full course on media ethics, and the idea behind the project is, as I had said initially also, you teach it in a way. We have a curriculum, but to teach it in a way that there is a buy-in from the media industry, there are experiences of the real life situations incorporated in the syllabus, and the whole approach is such that it becomes not just a course where you have to memorize things and reproduce, but a skill building course like any other. Like you learn how to handle a camera, like you learn how to do editing. Similarly, you also develop the skill of ethical decision making when you are faced with an ethical dilemma. How do you deal with such a situation? Which value
particularly when you are dealing with women issues?
Absolutely.
That has to be more careful.
How to be more sensitive when you are reporting
How is
issues.
that in US universities?
We actually, journalism ethics courses are required. They're not an option.
Yes.
Okay. So, for instance, journalism ethics is a required course for all our students who are going into any professional field.
Yes.
So that's sort of, it's not something that they can choose and pick.
Okay.
And not only that, United States, I mean, it has a long history of all these professional organizations which have huge media ethics divisions, in which, of course, I
Yeah.
play some role, where, not only students, but faculty and practitioners can go and take workshops. So ethics is not an afterthought.
Yeah.
Ethics is something that's built into the language and the system.
Thank you very much, Shakuntala rao, and also Kanchan, for
Thank you for
joining us
having us.
today
Thank you so
evening.
much.
And
Thank you.
I wish you all the best in your endeavor, and I wish your project a success. And I hope a good curriculum in journalism ethics will come out. Manam Shakuntala rao garu, Kanchan Malik గారితో మాట్లాడినాం. వారిద్దరు కలిసి ఒక ప్రాజెక్ట్ చేస్తున్నారు జర్నలిజంలో నైతికత మీద. తప్పనిసరిగా చాలా అవసరం. ఇవాళ వ్యాపారం ముందు పీట వేసుకున్న తరుణంలో జర్నలిజం ఎథిక్స్ చాలా అవసరం, నైతికత చాలా అవసరం అని చెప్తున్నారు. ఇది అతిథులతో మనం చేసిన ఇంటర్వ్యూ.
Thank you.
Thank you.